Yo, what is good, YouTube? What's good, PlayStation Nation? It is your boy Persona of Gaming with Persona. And yo, man, listen. What did I say? I think a week ago. I say, gamers, us as gamers, we need to be a part of the solution and not the problem, right? So, your boy, man, I'm about to start doing more reviews and whatnot on games that I've played and completed. And what better way to kick things off than with Babylon's Falls, a game that people love to hate, right? But have not played themselves. So, what you're seeing here is actually the final boss. Her name is Nurgle, and she is pretty much like the creator of the Blue Sun or whatever, right? This was a pretty tough boss fight too, man. Shout out to Bari and the random that was with us, man, when we were doing this final boss fight. So, I hope you enjoy the gameplay. So for me, I put about 30 hours into Babylon Fall, man, and I gotta be honest, the game, for me, the game really is dope, right? I really do enjoy the game. It is a games as a service or a live service game, so that does mean that, there is grinding, there is, it's got the microtransactions or the games as a service tropes that, a lot of people do hate. But I'm gonna start with, so I'm gonna tackle like 3 or 4 categories, right? So, we're gonna do graphics, story, gameplay, and if you should buy or if you should check it out, and I'll give my score at the end, right? So Babylon's Fall, it is, like I said, it is a games as a service, and I do want to start with the graphics, right? Because we seen this game, I think maybe like 4 years ago was when we first saw this game. I'm gonna say maybe 2017 or 2017, 2018, I think is when we first saw this game. And when we first saw this game, in my opinion, from what I saw, I thought that this was going to be like a single player experience. But later on, when we did see more of this game, it was revealed that this was going to be a co-op experience. And kind of what you have now, where you play with your friends, play with randoms and things like that. So I want to start with the graphics because I think that's one of the most noticeable things when it comes to this game. I see a lot of people they'll say, "Oh, the graphics doesn't look good," and da 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 da. And I'm gonna be honest, man. The graphics is not the best, man. Like it's one of those games where, um, if you're buying, if the selling point was if they was trying to sell this off of the graphics, this would definitely be a no buy, right? And in today's time, obviously, with us being in the next generation of consoles with the PS5 and whatnot, we definitely want to see games that are much prettier and much easier on the eyes and whatnot, right? So although the graphics is not perfect, the gameplay and stuff like that for this game definitely is good. But the graphics is definitely something that is lacking in this game, and it's definitely something that I feel like, especially with it being Platinum and Square, I'm actually kind of surprised that this game, at least in the graphics department, this game didn't look a little bit better coming out the gate. Now I will say, and it's funny too because with this actual gameplay that you're seeing, the graphics actually looks a lot better because when the game first came out, it had like this weird film grain, and they were trying to go for a specific art style, right? They were trying to go for like this painting, Renaissance painting type of ordeal, right? And so the graphics for this game definitely was not this strong suit, but in the recent update that they had for this game, I think it was either last week or the week before, the graphics definitely looked a lot sharper. Like the textures and everything was really sharp. And one thing I will say too is, despite the graphics not being the best, the performance for this game is phenomenal. As you see in the gameplay, man, like I said, it's me, Bari, and it's random. There's a lot of things going on the screen, a lot of like, projectiles and moving around and things like that. And I have to say, man, for Babylon's Fall, the performance of this game really is top tier. Like, there was no performance issues, no performance hiccups. Me and Bari has been playing this game quite a bit when we were going through the missions and the story, and all our times of playing together, there was no performance issues. And even when I was playing solo and playing like with randoms and whatnot, no performance issues whatsoever, man. Like the frame rate was really good. I didn't notice any dips or anything like that. And that's one thing I will give this game credit for. Despite the graphics isn't the best, the performance for this game definitely is phenomenal. So it definitely gets some points there. So outside of the performance, let's talk about, instead of performance, the graphics, let's talk about the story itself, right? So when you got these types of games, like these games as a service types of games, or live service games, or whatever you want to call it, the structure of the story is a bit different, right? It is a story that you can play from start to finish with your friends. So if this was a game that you wanted to pick up, either now or on a sale or whatever, and you and your buddies wanted to play, you can most definitely play this entire game with your friends online, right? Or you could play it solo. So when it comes to the story itself, I actually think the story is pretty interesting and pretty cool, right? Because, and not to, I don't want to spoil too much if you do pick it up, but to kind of give you like a little synopsis of it. So you are a sentinel, right? And you have this thing on your back called a Gideon coffin. And what the Gideon coffin is it's like an extension of yourself. It taps into these demigod abilities that allow you to wield more weapons and wield, different types of abilities and powers and whatnot. And it makes you almost like a demigod. And your sole purpose is to protect Neo Babylon, right? And pretty much protect Neo Babylon and go through the ziggurat and like, fend off foes and keep them safe and all this crazy stuff, right? So that's kind of like a quick synopsis of the game. And as you go deeper into the story, you actually start to learn the reason why Sentinels were even a thing, how they came about, and what their true purpose were, and how the Gideon coffins are actually more than what they actually are, right? Like, instead of it just being, a way for you to become a demigod, it was actually like something where you became more than just a demigod. You actually were like like a soul ruler type of thing, right? And so like when you learn about your true self, and you learn about who you are as a sentinel, and understand the reason why you were brought forth to do what you do, that's when you start uncovering like different characters like Master Isham, which is kind of like your guide through the story. Sophia, she is like the army's like captain or whatever, but you also take a lot of orders from her. Like the reason why you even became a sentinel is because of her, and because of this ritual that Neo Babylon has. Lycris, which is some kids you meet in town, right? And he becomes like a like that tag along. You ever see like those movies where you have like that tag along kid or whatever in the story of a movie, like where like he wants to be along for the adventure type of thing? That's who he is, and that's who he becomes, right? So when the story for this, for me, like I said, is really interesting, especially when you start learning about some of the other characters like Lananos, and I forgot the other guy's name, man. He was like this soldier from the Goat Knights. Elion, that's his name. You start meeting like other cool characters in the story as you progress through, and you start to really understand, like, again, like what Neo Babylon is, what Sentinels are, your purpose, and what other people's how your purpose for being there coincides and aligns with other people's purposes, like again, like Master Isham and stuff like that. So the story for me, man, I really think it was a really interesting story. Now, is it on some like Last of Us 2 level or whatever the game should be? No, absolutely not, right? But I don't think it's really fair to do some type of comparisons like that. I think for the story of what they were trying to do here, I do think it definitely hits its mark, right? And I do think that it was pretty interesting to me, and it definitely had me really like interested and like, oh wow, that happened like that. Yo, I didn't even know that was a thing. You know what I mean? So I definitely do think that the story was pretty cool. I do think and again, I think the problem, especially with a lot of reviewers and what they were saying, like one of the problems I think you will run into when it comes to the story is the story's slow. It's a slow burn, right? Even when it comes to like gameplay wise, right? Which we'll get to next. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but with the story, it starts slow. So it's definitely something that it's gonna pick up, and you got to really stick with it. If you don't stick with it, you end up missing out on some really, really good moments and some good cutscenes and stuff like that, and really a really interesting story, in my opinion. So the story, I think, is pretty solid. Now let's get into the gameplay, right? Because I think the gameplay is one of its strongest suits. But I also think although I think the gameplay and combat is very, very strong, I do think it's also a bit of a weak point as well. And the reason why I say a little bit of a weak point is because the start to it is very slow, like I said. So if you're not really sticking with the game, you're really going to miss out on some really important gameplay elements. And like we're talking like game changing gameplay elements. So at the beginning of the game, you got your hack and slash usual stuff. You're using this Gideon coffin. You don't really know what it's for. You don't really know what its capabilities are, right? But then halfway through the game, you get what's called the Dynamis, right? And what the Dynamis is the Dynamis, it's like an upgrade to the Gideon coffin where now it allows you to use soul tethering abilities, right? So for my character, which is more of a tank character, she is of the Agavian race, right? And so for her, one of her soul tether abilities is Bloodlust or Soul Steal. And what Soul Steal does is it replenishes your spirit gauge, which is the red bar you see underneath my health bar, but it also replenishes your health as well. And it allows you to, whenever you do attacks, they heal you. So to kind of touch on the red bar real quick. So in order to use, so you can wield 4 weapons, right? 2 weapons in your hand and then the 2 weapons on your back. You choose between a sword, a bow, a staff, bow and arrow, staff, hammer, shield, right? And things like that. And the way it works is in order to use your other 2 weapons that's on your back through the Dynamis, through the Gideon coffin, that uses spirit points or spirit energy, right? And the way you get spirit energy is from using just attacking. Like, so you can have it like the way my setup is, where it's like any attacks that I do, I'm replenishing a lot of spirit energy, so I can keep using the weapons on my back through the Gideon coffin and still use my double hand weapons as well. And I'm swinging and going super crazy, right? But that's just like an example of like some of the later abilities that you can use. Another thing is when it comes to the combat, and why I say this combat is so layered is because there's also different fighting abilities, not fighting abilities, but different fighting styles that you can use. And again, this is stuff that you get so much later in the game. And I kind of wish with Platinum and what they were doing, I really do wish that they kind of brought this stuff, fleshed this stuff out a little bit sooner, because I feel like if a lot of people were getting this stuff sooner, I really do feel like the reception with this game would have been a lot more, a bit more positive, just because like, all the cool things you can do. So for the fighting abilities, what you can do is you can have a standard fighting style, which is, basic attacks and combo structure. You can have a power fighting style, which is more centered around slower but more heavy swings that deal more damage, right? And when you charge your weapons on your back through the Gideon, you can charge it for longer, but it also does even more damage and it uses less spirit energy. And then you've got the technical fighting style, which is more combo driven, but also more methodical. So if you're using the technical, because that's the style that I use, is the technical. If you're using the technical fighting style, it's much more methodical. It's a little bit slower in some instances, just because the way the combat works for that is you get like these little flashes of red around your body. And if you press like triangle or press like the Gideon, press like your R2 or L2, because that's how you use the weapons on your back through the Gideon coffin. If you press that at the right time when it flashes, when you're doing in the middle of a combo with the technical way, it does like more damage, but it also like does like this flash EX type of move. It's really crazy. Like I really do love the technical style so much. But those are examples of like how deep the combat is for this game. And again, I love the combat and I think the combat is great. But I do think that it is something that, again, I wish some of that was fleshed out sooner, because if it was fleshed out a little bit earlier into the gameplay, it would be, again, I think it would have been a much more public, received a little bit better public wise. Now, let's talk about the whole games as a service aspect and whatnot. Listen, with this game, there's a lot that you can do here, man. Like there really is a lot outside of the story. They have skirmishes. They just added duels, which is specialized missions where you fight tougher, much tougher enemies. They get much better gear and things like that. There is really, honestly, with this game, this is one of those games where, although it is a games as a service and it's an ever evolving world and all that stuff, the usual tropes that's used for games as a service, everything you can do is in the game, and they're very generous with armor, weapons, build crafting and stuff like that. If you just play the game and you do good, you do good combos and you get special rankings and stuff like that, because each part of the game is separated, or a mission I should say, separated into chapters. So it's 4 chapters and you get a ranking at the end of that chapter. If you get like a gold or platinum or pure platinum, that betters your chances of getting much greater gear, right? So with this game, there really isn't anything that is saying, yo, you gotta spend money in order to get this, or you gotta spend money in order to get that, or whatever. Through regular gameplay, right? Me and Bari, through regular gameplay, I was able to get like much better gear. I was able to get my power level up through like a little bit of grinding and whatnot. Obviously, I'm saucing these folks up, in this game. So I'm doing some ill combos and whatnot. Y'all see, if y'all follow me on Twitter, then y'all already know what it is. You feel me? So with that type of stuff, it definitely I was getting a lot of great gear in this game, and I never felt compelled to have to spend any type of money. There's a lot of content here, right? There's a lot for you to do. And like I said, the way the mission structure is, it's like you go to like a mission board, you choose what you want to do. And because there's like this hub area where all of the players kind of congregate, when you post up it'll post up like, hey, Persona just started a new mission. So when you do that, it will be like, oh, okay, like everyone will see it. And if someone wants to join, they can, right? If they don't want to join, obviously you just start it up and you just play, or whatever the case may be. And so like, that's for me, man. Like I said, the game is not perfect, right? It's got some problem. It's got its problems, man. Like I said, the graphics isn't the best. I do think the story is good, but it's a very slow start, right? And some of the combat I think is very good, but again, I think some of the better aspects of the combat is a little too far out, right? Especially if you're trying to pull somebody in and really entice somebody to continue to play. I do think that stuff is a little too far out. Some of that could have been consolidated a little bit and pushed up a little sooner to be like, oh wow, I could do this. Damn, man, I definitely want to keep playing to see what else I can get, or how much better I can get doing this. The performance is solid, very good performance, very fun, right? I do think the game is very fun, very enjoyable. And like I said, there's a lot there to do, right? Like I put about 30 hours or so into the game. There's still a lot of stuff left on the table for me to do with the skirmishes, with the duels, and then they have a roadmap where they have like a ton of other content coming to the game as well, right? New story missions and things like that to do within the ziggurat. So for me, man, I really do enjoy this game. I really think it's dope. For me, if I had to give this game a score right now, I would give it about a 7 out of 10, right? Because there are definitely some cons there, and there's definitely things that could be fixed, and things that again, I really just wish they would have made more things accessible sooner, right? Because my interest for this game was very high anyway. But again, if it's somebody that's new, or somebody that's kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, or aren't really sure, I can see how they would drop this game a little bit sooner. Because again, a lot of the better things is a little bit further out in that story. I think the story is pretty interesting. I think the story is cool. It's a slow start, and a lot of people just didn't stick with it when it came to this game. So my score again, 7 out of 10. I think it's a great game. I think it's a cool game. Should you try it out? Listen, if you're not really into games as a service games, or things like that, I would say wait, right? Because again, if it's not really your cup of tea, then I get it. Definitely wait. Maybe wait for a sale, or if you want to wait for it, or whatever case may be. If you're someone that don't mind grinding a little bit in a game, or that whole game as a service aspect of it, again, everything is there on the table. The missions, the armor, everything is there. So you just gotta play, and the gameplay is great enough to where it's gonna be, it's gonna be fun as you play. So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, man, like, comment, subscribe, man. I really appreciate y'all. And I hope you enjoyed this review. Again, my score is a 7 out of 10 for this game. And that's pretty much it, man. I appreciate y'all.